Hello and welcome to this video. Today we're going to go over the books that I read in August and my September TBR. As usual, I'll be using Goodreads to kind of keep track of the books that I read because I do listen to a lot of audiobooks that I don't physically own. So the first book that it looks like I read in August was Five Survive by Holly Jackson. I read this book because it is the same author as the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and I really enjoyed this series. I don't think I enjoyed Five Survive quite as much. I'd give it a 3-star rating. Looking back, it's probably like a 3.25 or 3.5 star, but yeah, around 3 is pretty good. I wouldn't say that I necessarily guessed what happened in the end, but it wasn't like a total surprise either. I don't know. It was just an okay book. I still do think it's a good book if you're into like, it's not really a murder mystery, but like into kind of like mystery thrillers, it might be a good one for you. It did move relatively quickly, but I was also listening to it as an audiobook, and I feel like sometimes books that maybe aren't as interesting are just easier to get through on audiobooks because you're not mentally taking breaks from them as you go, so the reading just keeps going, even if you start zoning out. And so maybe that helped me a little bit here. But basically, this is a story about a group of kids that are going on a road trip. One of the kids is a little bit poor, and so they're not flying as a group. Instead, they are taking an RV, and they end up getting stuck kind of in the middle of nowhere. And then it seems that for some reason, someone's targeting them, and they have a gun, and they see some bullet holes in tires and whatnot, and they are trapped in this RV. They're trying to figure out, one, why is somebody targeting them? Who exactly in that RV is the target in this group of friends? Because this guy has a walkie-talkie, and he says that he is specifically looking for a secret from one of them. And then we're also trying to figure out how to get out of this situation, how to contact the police, or, however like they can manage to get out. So it is an interesting concept. I just don't think it was my favorite book in the world. The next book that I read was Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I gave this 5 stars, but it is a really difficult one to rate because it is an autobiography. It's kind of difficult to rate people's lived experiences, but what went into this rating was the writing style, and the way in which the story was told was really compelling. For those who don't know, this was Brock Turner's rape victim, and so definite warning going into this book for like suicide and rape. But I think if you can stomach it, it is a really good read. I think, especially if you are a male, it might be helpful to read to kind of get the perspective of women and what they have to face when going through trials like this, or just like on an everyday basis, really. It was an interesting read for people that don't know about the case. Maybe look up the case a little bit before reading the book, or go into it completely blind if you want. But yeah, I do recommend it for people that are able to read it. On a lighter topic, the next book I read was Stone of Destiny. I've talked about this in a few other videos, so I'm not going to talk about it much here. But basically, the Stone of Destiny is a stone on which the kings of Scotland all sat when they were coronated. And this stone has been used in English coronations as well. It was being held at Westminster Abbey, and this is the story of these college students going and stealing the stone and bringing it back to Scotland. There's also a movie that I highly recommend. Oh, and I gave this 4 stars as well. The story itself is great. It just doesn't have that like extra something that makes it 5 stars. I think if it was written more as a story and less as a recollection, that would make sense if you've read the book. Maybe it would have been 5 stars, but definitely a really good book, and I do recommend. The next book that I read was Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas, and I gave it 5 stars. I really, really love this series. For those who don't know, it is part of the Throne of Glass series. I previously read ACOTAR, and I really, really did like that series, but I feel like Throne of Glass might have won me over. I might like Throne of Glass even more. While the ACOTAR series has its fun, spicy moments for people that enjoy that, I kind of appreciate that Throne of Glass doesn't have so much of that, at least not yet. And it, I don't know, just has a really interesting storyline. It does have some like spiciness, but I would say most of it is relatively closed door. So if that's something you're concerned about so far in the series, it's okay, but I don't know about later in the series. But I really can't say a whole lot about it other than it's a really compelling story. Look up the synopsis for Throne of Glass to see if you're interested in it. But yeah, definitely recommend if you're looking to get into a new fantasy series. After that, I read In the Lives of Puppets, and I gave this 4 stars. I think it might be more of a 3.5. If I'm comparing it to TJ Klune's other books, I don't like it as much. I would say it's maybe my least favorite of the 3 books that I've read, which is The House in the Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door, with the Whispering Door being my absolute favorite. I don't know. It's a good series. It's sci-fi for people that are interested in that. I don't tend to enjoy sci-fi. And then just some of the characters are a little bit flat because they're robots. And so like it makes sense. They kind of have their shtick and they stick to that. But there's this whole thing about the robots being able to grow and learn, and like you see a little bit of that in certain characters, but then other characters not so much. Yeah, it's basically about this boy who is living with this robot that he sees as his father, and this boy, you know, finds other robot parts and then creates these, well, doesn't really create them, he fixes them so that they are functional again. And the robots end up going on this adventure with him after something horrible happens to his family. I can't really say too much more than that. It is an interesting story, and I do think it's a good read. I just don't think it's quite as compelling as other of TJ Klune's books. There's also, it felt like a lot, but maybe it wasn't really a lot, of just like random jokes about like sexuality and arousal, and it just felt a little bit off-putting. Like I feel like it wasn't done in the most tasteful way. There were 1 or 2 times where it was kind of funny and I was like, oh, okay, I see the joke, I enjoy it, but then like, let's move on. But I feel like it just kept coming up in a weird way. So that was a little bit odd. But yeah, 3 stars for this guy. After that was How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davis. And I gave this 4 stars. This was again an audiobook, and it's only about 3 hours long. This is targeted towards people that are neurotypical, maybe have autism, ADHD, etc. And it's an interesting book, and I did enjoy it, and I think that for some people the ideas and strategies laid forth could be really helpful. For me, it was stuff that I had already pretty much figured out myself. And by that, I mean, like, some of the ideas that they were talking about was having a hard time switching between tasks, and I definitely have that problem. I have a really hard time when I'm like, okay, I'm done with something, I need to go do the dishes now. Like, that energy to just get started feels so big that sometimes it's really difficult for me to like get over that hurdle. And I don't know how to explain that well to people that don't face this problem. Because this just seems like it's something that's so simple, right? Like, it shouldn't be hard, but sometimes it just is. And at times in our lives where we're super stressed or we're burnt out, there's a lot going on, or you're in times of change, maybe you just had a kid, started a new job, like those things can impact our mental health and just make it difficult to live our everyday lives in a neat and efficient way. So some of the things she was talking about was like, you don't necessarily need to be 100% clean all the time. It is okay if your floors are spotless but your dishes haven't been done, or vice versa. Like, not everything needs to be clean at the same time. And I think that was an interesting concept. That was something that was a little bit new of an idea to me, because I always feel like there's one part of my house that's a mess. And it doesn't matter, like, once I clean that, something else is a mess, right? Like, nothing's ever 100%, except maybe if I've cleaned for like 8 hours that day because I have company coming over, then we're good. But I thought that was interesting. And then she talked about batching tasks. So the way that I've done this before reading this book is just, if I know I have a bunch of tasks where I need to sit at my computer, I will do all of those back to back. If I have tasks that require me to walk around the house a lot, I will just do all of those together. So for instance, maybe I need to check my emails, I need to edit a video, I need to do my budget, I need to pay bills. All those things need to be done sitting at my desk, so I'll do them all together. Like, some of the strategies, they make sense. They were just things that I had already thought of to do myself because it just felt easier and more natural to me to do it that way. But yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting book. That was a pretty long summary. Anyway, that is everything that I read in August. So let's get to my September TBR. let's start with the books that I'm already in the middle of. The first one is Obsessed. This was on my TBR for last month. We're gonna try to finish it this month. If you want to hear about it, listen to last month's video. I am a little more than halfway. You can see where my bookmark is, maybe. Nope, it does not want to focus, does it? Well, okay, that's fine. It is interesting. Basically, we have this kind of like dual perspective slash time period going on. So we have like Nazi Germany, and we have these women in a camp that are pregnant in a Nazi camp, and they're worried that they're going to be killed along with their babies. And then we have modern day times where there's these things called the Stone of David, which are the stones that David used to kill Goliath. And these people are trying to find them out. We're following the son of one of the women in that camp that was pregnant. And so you're seeing these two different perspectives and timelines. So it is interesting. Right now I'm leaning towards like a 3-star. It's not as interesting and fast-paced as a lot of Ted Decker's books that I've read previously. But I also think this one was written before a lot of the other ones that I've read, so I guess that makes sense. The next one is Designing Your New Work Life. I did start this last month. I did kind of want to finish it last month, but it is also the quarterly book club pick at work. So like I didn't need to finish it last month, and I just kind of put it off because I wanted to read something more fun and interesting and a little faster pace, some fiction, and just break it up because I was getting kind of like slogged down with this. But hopefully, slogged, is slogged even a word? Bogged down with this, but hopefully I will finish it this month. I'm also currently listening to Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas, which is part of the Throne of Glass series. Not going to talk about that too much because I'm not very far into it, and also it is the 4th book in the series, so I can't say a whole lot without spoiling previous books. Next, I want to read The Twyford Code, which I recently picked up. It is kind of like a mystery, but it's told in the format of like emails, memos, texts, and so it just, the last book, the previous book, The Appeal, was really interesting to read. I don't know anything about the plot of this. I just like mixed media books, if I'm going to be honest. Okay, the next book that I'm hoping to read is Miss Peregrine's Museum of Wonders, and this is just kind of like, I don't even know what to call it. A museum of wonders. I mean, that's what it is. It has a bunch of pictures and like describes certain things. So like on this page it says role-playing normal encounters with your loop mates. And so it's just all about like this world, and it's like a guide to being a, what do they call it? A peculiar. Yeah, a guide to being a peculiar and how to like keep yourself safe and like different things that different peculiars can do. It looks interesting. I will say I got it more from a like collector standpoint because I do have all the other books and I wanted this one. But I will still definitely read it. The pictures that the author uses in the books I always find fascinating. So I'm looking forward to looking through this. And the last book, which was also on my TBR for last month, and this is honestly one that is the lowest priority this coming month, and so if I don't get to it again, I won't be completely surprised, but like it is something I still would like to read, so if I have time for it, then I will. All that to say, it is Paper Towns by John Green. This is an old book, but I found it at, I think, half price books for literally $1, so I couldn't not get it. Anyway, this is one that I actually don't know a whole lot about, again, because I like to keep myself in the dark before reading books, but it is kind of like a mystery. I've kind of had a hard time picking it up simply because I feel like I've been reading a lot of mysteries lately. And like I went from reading no mysteries to reading several in a row, and so now I'm kind of in this like, I don't know that I want to read something else in that genre. And right now I'm reading Obsessed by Ted Dekker, which is kind of like mystery thriller-y, and so I just don't want something else with that same vibe back to back. I feel like I'm getting kind of tired of that, which is sad. I do love that, but I do feel like sometimes too much of a good thing is still too much. So hopefully by the end of the month I'll feel ready for something like this, but honestly we'll see, because who knows. I'm running out of space over here. Anyway, that is the end of this video. If you liked, make sure to subscribe. Let me know if you have any book recommendations down below, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!